Much, Jill, and thanks everybody for joining us. Real quick, I am having a little bit of a microphone issue this morning, so I'm doing this by phone. If there's any issues hearing anything, please be sure to chime in, and I'll address it. So anyway, today we want to talk a little bit about just some sort of frequently asked stuff about running your business in a remote world. This is a topic that we hear about pretty much nonstop in light of COVID. And the truth is that this is probably going to be the way things are for at least a little while, with at least some kind of hybrid on-site remote situation. So where do we stand today? So, I don't know how everyone on the line feels, but I don't feel like we're really going to be going back to exactly the way things were. I mean, even let's say for the sake of argument, a vaccine comes out, we achieve some kind of immunity, the public health issue diminishes. I think that we'll still probably have people for a variety of reasons are going to keep working in this sort of hybrid work from home environment. Some businesses, clients we deal with, other businesses we talk with in the community are considering going full remote. Some people are asking questions about do they even need an office? Do we, for the work we do, does it even make sense? Can we leverage the money we spend on real estate or rent, et cetera, into technology or other things that benefit us and provide real value? It may not be the same for everyone. I don't know why that just happened. Excuse me. It may not be the same for everybody, but there's definitely some considerations there. Some staff will either require or need to have work from home flexibility. So, today is the 26th, I believe. If you, here in Maryland and Baltimore, I know that a lot of kids are going to be doing their schoolwork remotely for the time being. Some people obviously have family members that they need to watch out for, et cetera. And whether we want people to come back to the office or not, the reality is that some people, very valuable people who are doing good work for us, are going to need to have that work from home flexibility. So we need to talk about it. Technology and client demands also sort of push us towards this anytime, anywhere work engagement model. When I was doing traveling before, I was in Dallas and Florida earlier this year, et cetera. Just because I was in an airport or because I was in a hotel room, it didn't mean that my work stopped. People didn't really care that I was flying around the country for a week. The reality is that they still wanted my attention. They still wanted me to follow up on things. And fortunately, I could do that. I could, log in at night and do a few emails from my hotel room or something like that. So the engagement model is really demanding that we have this flexibility. If we're going to have it, then that's probably going to extend to the remote working from home situation. I would also say that what's probably happening now, at least from my perspective, I think there's a general culture shift in the accessibility of remote work. So, I think there is a lot of fear, especially in March, that we're going to let everybody work from home and nobody's going to get anything done. And I can speak for how things are at DPS. That's certainly not the case. We're measuring through our KPIs things like service desk tickets closed and how fast we're responding to people and how our projects are going and things like that. And I don't feel like we've really hit that here. I think that obviously may not be the case everywhere. But the truth is that I think as managers who may be on the line probably know, you can see people's output, whether they're in your office in front of you or maybe working from their home office, because you can't really hide productivity. So I think there is going to be a culture shift. We are just going to see more people feel good about that working from home situation. So today, these were a few subjects that we heard about in advance, and we definitely want to get your questions in on this too. So we want to talk just sort of about communications, internal and external communications. How do we deal with this in this new environment? Disaster recovery planning changes. Now that we have people who are working in a large part out of their homes or other locations, how does that impact our disaster recovery planning? How do we need to think about it? Security risks for remote staff, including VPN benefits and limitations. So, everybody's going remotely, and maybe they have their own personal device, or they have a company laptop, a mobile device that they own themselves. and they may connect to company assets that are located either physically in their office, in the main office, or perhaps in a public cloud like a Microsoft Azure or an Amazon or something like that. So the security risks have shifted from when you decentralize your workforce. There's also the concept of personal versus company-owned devices. So, this has been a debate in the past: is should we allow people who work to use their personal devices, or should everything be company issued? It used to be that people talked about this stuff when it came to, whether we bought them an iPhone or an Android, or whether they used their own and then we installed some software on it. Well, now it's extended to pretty much any computing device. Personal PCs that people are using to work remotely that they're more comfortable with, or the iPad that was gathering dust and now is an important work device. The benefits of cloud and software as a service for remote work. So, I mean, what's really fortunate, and I'm probably a broken record on this, is that we're lucky that a lot of this happened in a time where we have pretty decent access to broadband. Obviously, some rural areas, other parts of the country don't have it as well as maybe here in Maryland, in the suburbs. But the fact that you can connect to all these cloud-based and software as a service platforms really from any place has really facilitated a clean shift for a lot of organizations to working remotely. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk with the challenges of hybrid and remote on-site work. So obviously, I'm an advocate for having this hybrid solution, but there aren't challenges that go along the way. We're going to talk about it. Also not on this agenda is one of the questions that came in after the fact about productivity. So we're going to talk a little bit about measuring productivity, watching people, and things like that. So internally, a few items to consider regarding standards and means of communication with your team. The first thing is I would really recommend you come up with an agreed upon set of tools for communications. And so you have things, the obvious things like actual telephones and phone conferences, but also the virtual conferencing tools we use. So here at DP Solutions, for everything we do internally, we're using Microsoft Teams. We're having our weekly management meetings where we share things on our screen. I have the KPI sheets that we use to measure how we're doing. That's an Excel spreadsheet. I broadcast that to the group. Everyone connects remotely. We all use our webcams, and it's great. But we agreed that that's the platform we're working with. We don't have people on our team, some of them using Teams, and other people using Slack, and other people using Google Hangouts, and other people using, WebEx, something like that. And that's not to deride any of these platforms, but it is to say that if we don't agree about what our products are, how can we have any kind of control over the security and management of those products? So it's really important we do that. And I would really recommend avoid using personal accounts and tools. So while, maybe there's flexibility on devices that people use, I don't think people should be having business type discussions on their personal Google account. So we need to make sure that that's agreed upon, written in policy, et cetera. We should distinguish between normal discussion and sensitive discussion. So, if I'm having a little, for example, we had our town hall last week, which obviously wasn't our typical town hall, it was virtual. That's normal discussion. We're not really talking big secrets in there, but maybe we're going to have a conversation on the management team about some HR stuff or salaries or something like that. Those kinds of discussions have to be handled a little bit better in terms of gatekeeping, who gets allowed into the discussion, how we monitor who attends our meetings, and things like that. One thing we should also consider is a sensitive data policy if you don't already have one. I mean, this was something we already needed, but now that people are working remotely and we have this kind of data sprawl where people are working on pieces of information that may be sensitive in their homes, out and about, in their travels, whatever, we really do need to make sure that that policy is in place and that that policy reflects the working environment we have right now. SANS Institute, SANS.org, I believe, or SANSinstitute.org, you can Google it, has many templates for this stuff, but we should establish some rules about when you're handling something sensitively and you're going to communicate internally with one of your colleagues, how you can do it, what the rules of engagement are, etc. One thing that's really a good idea is to catalog cell phone numbers and create expectations for responsiveness. So we should know, everybody in the company should know how to reach every person that they need to work with on a day-to-day basis. But then there also should be reasonableness about responsiveness. We're in a weird time right now where, maybe because the kids are in need some attention, you're not always able to respond the second somebody calls you. Let's establish a little bit of responsiveness expectations. So, for example, hey, I just wanted you to know my kid is really busy with something with me at 9 a.m., but at 10 a.m. to 11 a.m., I'm wide open and I can take your call. Or 2 p.m. is a really bad time for me. So those kinds of things. We should at least talk about expectations for responsiveness, and then also be, it's not included on the slide, but we should also be flexible, with the realization that this isn't normal, and that as long as people are making a good effort and we're meeting our commitments to one another, that we're not going to chew them out because they're better engaged at 8 a.m. than they are at 10:30 a.m. or something like that. Externally, this stuff matters too. So you're going to have to handle things a little bit different with people outside your organization than inside your organization. So first, if it comes up, I don't know why that happened. Having a sensitive data policy for third parties. So I've talked about a little bit how you have internal communication channels, rules about sharing, storage for your sensitive data, things like that, backups, so on and so forth. But what about with third parties? You're about to have a meeting with an auditor or something like that remotely, and you're about going to send sensitive data to that third party. How can you do that in such a way so that the data is not intercepted in transit? What are the specific means that you have to do this? How do you screen these people, these third parties, to make sure they are who they say they are when you're about to give them sensitive information? How do you verify their identity? Stuff like that. We need to come up with a set of rules and then stick to them and hold ourselves accountable to it. Whoops. Well, that's fine. We should unify communications among specific tools for things like virtual meetings or data transmissions. Obviously, for our webinar, we're using GoToMeeting, but even with our clients, when we're having these virtual meetings, oftentimes we're using MS Teams. And anything that is compliance related or sensitive, it really should have encryption in place. Another thing we really need to start looking out for, and I mentioned this in my latest video that we'll talk about at the end of the presentation today, is the idea of tailgating. So now we sort of have, tailgating before used to mean that you'd be in a Starbucks and someone would look over at your computer, or you'd be in an airport and someone's spying on you and watching what you're doing. But now we sort of have virtual tailgating where maybe people are joining the meeting and they've been admitted for whatever reason, or they have the link to attend the meeting, and there's no password on the meeting or what have you. And now someone's listening into your sensitive conversation. Every application that has virtual collaboration also offers the ability to look at attendees, who's actually connected on the call, and have identities for them. I would strongly consider having webcam, especially if the conversation is going to be sensitive, having webcams on so you can actually see who you're interacting with. I'd also recommend that you have that sort of admit button or admit feature, so that when somebody connects in and they're not one of your normal, people that you're communicating with internally, that you have to sort of check a box to let them in, and then again verify their identity and so on, because people are listening into this stuff, and that is the modern day tailgating when you consider what's going on for social engineering. I'm going to pivot a little bit to disaster recovery plan changes. So obviously there are new considerations for managing the risk of a disaster now that work is shifted. So device and failure and replacement might be a lot more critical. So we have all these people who are working remotely, and maybe they're either connecting to a server in their office, or they're connecting to a device, or they're utilizing a device that was provided them. They were issued a laptop, and then all of a sudden the thing just blows up for whatever reason. This stuff happens. Hard drives fail, motherboards fail, so on and so forth. Well, if your entire production is on a pre-built image laptop that has all of your applications on it and your VPN set up, and it's connecting to your data assets out in the public cloud, and then that thing goes down, well, all of a sudden you have a person with zero productivity. So we need to make sure we have something lined up for device failure. Not just that, but earlier this year, I think it's a little bit better now, but there were some supply chain concerns when it came to getting these devices. So if you have a staff of, say, 100 people, and all those people have a company-issued laptop, it may be wise of you to have, 5 extra ones that are sitting around, so that when Joe's device fails, that you can just say, oh, you know what, we've got one image ready to go. We can get it out to you next day. Shipping is still pretty good. So we can get this stuff to people quickly and get them back up and running. So you should really consider how the impact of a device failure may be. In the past, the big concern was what happens if our servers fail, and that could obviously still happen. But now these individuals who are remote, their devices become so much more important. Identity theft is a much greater concern today. We should be talking about in our disaster recovery plan, what do we do if somebody takes control of an employee with rights and they're going in, they're stealing data or skimming or doing whatever. We need to have solutions in place, A, to stop this from happening, B, to review and audit how it happened after the fact so that we can avoid it in the future. And then also that if there's people we need to communicate with about this, interested third parties, that we have a communications method for them as well. There's a very big risk of data sprawl. And we've talked about this in the past, the idea of sensitive data that belongs in a certain bucket. Maybe it belongs on our SharePoint for our company, our company SharePoint files, or our OneDrive, or Box account, or just our centralized server that's located back in our home office. We need to make sure that data is where it's supposed to be, and that people aren't just keeping stuff on their personal devices because that's easy for them. People need to adhere to the rules of sensitive data, the data that the company cares about belongs in this specific place, and that we avoid the idea of data sprawl, because we can't really protect, we can't really have proper backups, proper security, et cetera, if the data just lives in very random places that we can't easily track. There should be an increased focus on communication flow. What do I mean by that? So when we're talking about communication flow, imagine a big disaster that you may have dealt with in the past. And let's say you've got 50 employees in 5 different departments in your organization. If everybody's remote, we've got these 50 people totally decentralized. The top level leaders really need to communicate quickly to their direct reports about what's going on with the disaster, how it needs to adjust their workflow, what people's next steps are, et cetera. And then those leaders need to get with their sub teams and so on. That communication is even more important now than it was before, because it used to be that you could literally get on an intercom or get everybody together in a conference room and tell them about what's going on. Now we don't know how we're going to be able to reach these people. They might not all be available at the same time. They may be hard to reach. They may not be paying attention to what's going on at a time. So you need to have a management team that is focusing on the flow of disaster recovery information from the top down, and sort of like a tree kind of a way, if you want to look at it like an upside down tree, where the top level leaders are communicating regularly to their reports, so on and so forth. For remote teams, there are a lot of security risks. I could go on and on about security stuff all day, but just to highlight a few things. Authentication fraud and data breach in transit. So these are two that we sort of bundled together. So the first I talked about before, which is someone says, hey, I'm Ben Schmerler. I'm going to connect to our SharePoint platform and start stealing information, or I'm going to log into our virtual server and install malware on it or something like that. That is a big concern. Phishing is up. There's a reason why everybody is recommending multi-factor authentication and things like this to protect authentication, because this is where the targets are. It's much easier to break someone's password than it is to destroy, to break into the actual cybersecurity tools that the device has on it. So we need to make sure that we're really watching on the authentication end. And if you're concerned that you don't have enough there, you probably are right, and you should probably discuss with a professional. As far as data breach in transit is concerned, now that everyone's working remotely, if we're not using encryption to send information from one point to another, that information is going over the public internet in a readable form. So if I have a sensitive file and I need to get it from point A to point B, I can't just send it as a regular email, or I can't just send it as a regular, Google Hangouts message attachment or something like that. It should be a encrypted message over an encrypted channel, so that once it leaves my computer and heads off on the public internet, it's wrapped in that encryption layer, so it's unreadable by people in transit on the public highways that we all use. Phishing and social engineering, obviously this was already bad and it's getting worse. Tons of phishing and social engineering scams going out regarding COVID specifically. As you may or may not know, I run our phishing and security awareness program at DP Solutions, where we do quarterly phishing tests and security awareness trainings. And I've done a ton of COVID-related phishing tests where I say things about, the company's leave policy is changing, or I have this healthcare alert about COVID in your area or something like that. And I will tell you that I get significant click-throughs on this stuff, and people fall for it all the time, and the bad guys know this. So they're doubling down their efforts into scamming people using phishing attacks. So if you don't have an awareness program in place, if your team isn't looking out for it, it's really only a matter of time before they're compromised. Patching, for some reason it didn't pop up. Patching failures due to lack of centralization. So when everybody's in the same office and there's one pipe for all the data to come into, one internet pipe, those 50 devices that all grab the patch at the same time of day, you can kind of know when things don't work. The internet was down and nobody got the patch, so you deal with it after the fact. Now we have maybe, let's say if we have 50 devices, we have 50 different pipes that people are coming into, and people might not have their machines on when you want them to, or they might delay a patch or something like that. Fortunately for us and our clients, we've been seeing really good patch adherence rates, which we measure every week in our management meetings. But I could see this being a problem for organizations that maybe are just using built-in patch management tools without monitoring. So if you're not really using a patch management tool right now, or have some kind of oversight on your patching, now's the time to get that done, because these little loopholes, these little misses on patches could lead to significant breaches. Every time you hear about a major ransomware attack or malware, in the news, it's usually because a key security patch was not met. Granted, there are holes that we haven't had patches for yet, vulnerabilities that have not been addressed yet by the vendors, but most exploits that are used are going after existing patchable issues with devices. There's also mobile device invisibility. People start using their iPhone to carry data on it, and because there's no mobile device management, because there's no communication and no management, that these devices are now trading in data that you guys care about, and that data is not visible to the company, so that when that employee quits, or that phone is lost or hacked or compromised, now we have a data breach that we don't even know about. So it's really important that we take an inventory of the mobile devices, that we have some kind of management on them, that we can keep them wiped if necessary, if they're lost or patched and updated, that we have some kind of app control, etc. But we really need to start having control of our mobile devices if we don't already. And then finally, shadow IT, which kind of goes along all this stuff. I've talked about data sprawl. People just using IT stuff that they like themselves that aren't vetted. People, when they don't have, when the cat is away, the mice will play, so to speak. Well, we don't want people going in and taking, just using their own IT tools to manage their stuff, and that could create a big risk to us. Personal versus company-owned devices. I'm not going to belabor this too much. There's no right or wrong answer as to whether devices should be personally or corporate-owned. Personally owned devices, the real benefit to this is that if you have a heavy remote team that works in a SaaS environment and everything is web connectable, that can be really nice because then you can control all the security on the platform end, on your Microsoft 365 end, or your Salesforce end, or whatever the applications you use are, and that the devices themselves maybe get a patch management tool or something like that, and you can kind of manage them that way. If employees need a new device, they can go to Amazon or Best Buy or whatever, order that device, and then get back up and running. Obviously, that takes a big burden off of purchasing devices, but it puts a little bit more burden on management. Whereas the company-owned devices really rely on significant upfront investments. Obviously you're spending a bunch of money on laptops or desktop PCs up front, and but then you control all the rules about them, so you can say exactly what they do and what goes on them. I don't want to say that there's a right or wrong answer, but what you should, at the end of the day, you should have some rationale as to why you're allowing one or the other, or some kind of mix of both. Monitoring productivity. This came in from one of the attendees. So they were asking, and I'm paraphrasing here, how do you really measure productivity without that physical touch? And I just want to give a few comments about the way we've been dealing with it. So the first thing is everybody should be having check-ins to talk about challenges, daily agendas, client issues, etc. So first thing in the morning, 8:45, our management team has a management huddle. We all say 1 or 2 minutes what we have going on. Any hot button items, maybe we have a client that is down and needs an engineer right away, or maybe we have a client who is late on their payments or something, we need to reach out to them, whatever. It's basically a temperature check on where things are. Additionally, the department heads are supposed to have check-ins with their teams, and sort of like the same thing with the disaster recovery comments I made earlier. Your team should be having these sort of check-ins to just take their temperature, and they don't have to be very long. Ours, we want to keep under 15 minutes. Typically, I get through our management call in 5 to 10 minutes. But the point is that we want to make sure that things are moving forward, that nobody's struggling, that there isn't anything missed. That's it. Documentation of time. So I know this could be an unpopular one, but I think it's kind of important. We need to know where the 40 hours is going. I think it's obviously counterproductive to have somebody write a 3-page essay about everything they did in a single day. That's not a good use of time. But if somebody's working 9 to 5, they should be able to say that 2 hours went here, 2 hours went there, so on and so forth. We need to have some kind of metric that shows where people's time is going, and people should be able to attest to this. And then that stuff should be scrutinized in one-on-ones, reviews, etc. We can still do all these things. We can still do all these things that we did in the past. We just need probably to take a little bit more communication in the control of it. Some technology may have logging of connectivity, logins, etc. In other words, that you could see that the company-owned device was idle for either employees supposed to be working 9 to 5. The device was idle from 9 to 3. It wasn't being used because you can see from the monitoring tool that it wasn't there. Obviously, we need to be careful about that stuff. We don't necessarily know what people are doing. Maybe a device is idle, but the person is watching an assigned webinar, doing a training, or doing a phone call or something. So the device is idle, but they're not idle. We should use that with a grain of salt, but there may be some logging in place. There's also monitoring tools. For example, you could see what someone's doing, but I would be very careful about this. People don't want to be spied on. Most people who are working remotely are trying to get things done. I felt, and I alluded to this earlier in the conversation, which is that, with your most productive employees, there's no mystery that they're getting things done. There's no surprises. You don't need to worry about them so much. Their productivity is clear from their output. The people that you need to be mindful of are the people who are maybe not outputting so much, and what can you do to get them to be accountable for their time? One other thing I'll say in general, I recommend, is if you're going to have internal meetings, I've heard some people say leave the webcams on all day when working remotely. I think that's a little much. Me personally, I think leaving the webcams on all day. I mean, I wouldn't like having a camera on me all day. if I was working in the office. It's just a little uncomfortable. But I think if you're going to have a meeting, a one-on-one meeting, you can have the webcam on, and it doesn't necessarily mean that people have to be wearing a suit or something like that. But we can have some face time, some engagement there to make sure people are sharp, and I think that's beneficial to us personally anyway. I'm going to talk real quick about cloud and SaaS. So really, if you haven't started shifting your assets to the cloud, you really should be, because the truth is that for most, especially small businesses and the clients we deal with, a lot of the things we do are available in cloud or SaaS solutions. The number one thing is that the cost is very predictable. Everything is tiered. It's based on either processing or data storage or how many users you have connected or whatever. You're not really having to worry about big wholesale capital expense costs that come up. You know, if you're signing up your whole team to work in Salesforce, or you're signing up your whole team to work in Office 365, you know what these services cost per user per month. That's really nice to have. I mean, it used to be, you know, when I started working in MSPs in 2005, it used to be that you'd have to run up all these estimates for tens of thousands of dollars, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars of hardware to build someone's database system. And that was a very unpredictable cost. So, I mean, there's a huge benefit to that. More importantly for the remote work, it's very much geography agnostic. I mean, while certain compliance solutions will block IPs from some foreign countries, which is a good thing, these products generally just require you to have a stable, decent internet connection. They don't really care where you are. Furthermore, they tend to be device agnostic. So, you know, even the Microsoft products all are supported. You know, Office is supported on Mac. It's not like if you are a Mac user, you can't use Office 365. You absolutely can. That's one of the really nice things for using the cloud today, which is that we're able to allow people to get rid of those biases they used to have. You know, this person's a Mac person, that person's a PC person, this person's an Apple person, this person's an Android person. You don't really have to worry about those things quite as much. The real benefit from a security perspective now, if you do this stuff, is that you can control user rates from the hosting side, which could keep out unwanted former staff or maybe a compromised account. So if you've got 50 people and Joe one day is fired or quits or something like that, well, I can go to my administrator. They can they can change his password or disconnect his account or do whatever. And that account is now no longer a risk of someone breaching information from it, even if the machine is compromised. Or alternatively, let's say for the sake of argument that my account is compromised, Ben Schmerler, through Office 365, we could cut me off. You know, we could suspend my account while we figure out what the security issue is. So that's a really nice thing. It also limits exposure to compliance requirements and audits. So, you know, when you have to attest for, now we have a lot of clients who are dealing with CMMC from the federal government or NIST or HIPAA or PCI, et cetera. If you're carrying this sensitive data, you're going to be subject to a number of laws and regulations regarding how you store the data, what you do with it, the investments you have to make in technology to support that, so on and so forth. The nice thing about using, for example, the Microsoft Government Cloud is that it's called GCC High, is that you can say, well, I'm going to sign up for this flavor of Microsoft hosting, and it's going to build me all of this compliance around it. And so now when the auditor comes in and says, well, what are we doing for CMMC? It doesn't mean that I don't have to do things internally, but it does mean that there are a number of things that I can just check off the list because some hosting company is providing that for me, including data center audits, including encryption at rest on servers and things like that. I signed up for a subscription that gives me all that stuff. So that's a really nice thing. And I think it makes a lot of sense to not over leverage yourself in hardware that is going to be difficult to support. I know that there is an illusion of control when it comes to having your own servers, but there's also a lot of risks that associate with them. And I would rather sign a solid agreement with a company like a Microsoft, who is now liable for all these things, than try and build it all myself with the illusion to have the illusion of control. So a few challenges with working remotely. A big one is fatigue. I think if you tell people we're going to have a remote meeting for 2 hours, that's a long time to sit at a desk, stare at a monitor, have maybe your headphones on, your microphone on, your webcam on you, etc. That's just kind of fatiguing, at least for me. And I think that that's something we need to recognize, and that maybe, if you're going to have a 2-hour meeting, maybe you say at the end of the first hour, hey, everybody, why don't you go take a walk or grab yourself something to drink or enjoy the sunshine or something like that. I think that's just really important. Trust, I think the culture about remote work is getting a little bit better, but you definitely have people who, there are employees who feel like you may be monitoring them too much. There may be employers who feel that they don't have a comfortable view of what their staff is doing. And it's a big challenge. There's no simple answer to this, in the sense that, trust is something that's earned, kind of. It's not something that just is there. It's something that you sort of build. But it's definitely something that we need to watch out for and use, really, honestly, it all is going to come back to communication. If we're communicating with one another and we're having good check-ins and engagement, I think the fatigue and trust factors really improve over time. Why is it going back? There it goes. Isolation. So if you're working remotely all week, and I know sometimes for me when I'm writing slide decks or blogs or video scripts or whatever, I don't mind the isolation so much. I like the focus time. But I know for others, it's, the social experience of the office can be something that they miss. And so I really encourage you guys to try and do things like virtual happy hours or just check-ins. Try and make sure you have a touch of the personal to your meetings and things like that. Ask people about what they're doing. What kind of hobbies are you enjoying? I know in the past I've sometimes been a little too business focused and not enough people focused. I think all of us could use a little bit more focus on the people side to avoid that feeling of isolation. Control, obviously, and the next one just popped up. I'm having some weird scrolling issues today. I apologize. The rules still matter. We need people to understand and follow policy in order to manage risk. So we need to make sure that we continue communicating our policies, that we enforce things, and we hold people accountable, just even though they're working remotely. Balance, I think that goes without saying that when I know how it is for me, I wake up, I make my coffee, I sit at my desk at my home, I start working, and then 5 o'clock comes and I have to turn it off. And it's kind of hard to turn it off. It's easy to turn it off when I'm in my office and I go and hop in my car and I start listening to a podcast on the way home, and I go get dinner and things like that, because there's this physical separation between me and work. But when I'm working from home, that balance is a little bit harder to achieve. You got to find ways. Again, this is not an easy answer. You have to find ways to turn it off, or to say that this is my work time and this is not my work time. There are, depending on your personality or what you're into, concepts like exercise and meditation and other sort of wellness things can help you deal with that mental balance that you need. Lastly is interruption and privacy. So, when I sometimes doing things and all of a sudden I don't have any kids, but sometimes my cats start meowing at me because they don't know who I'm talking to. That's talking at a microphone to somebody else on this line, and they see me just talking. They're like, who's this guy talking with? And they just start meowing at me. And that can be a little off-putting. But it's just a general thing. Honestly, my view is that when it comes to interruptions and things like that, we should all be understanding. And we shouldn't, give people a hard time because of that stuff. There's also the idea of privacy too. If you have your kids around and you're trying to work, obviously that can be quite distracting. I know how it is for me. I like to listen to podcasts. I like to take things that sort of put me into my new zone. So I'm listening to some podcast about basketball or something like that, and I'm in my little happy place where I'm doing my fishing test and I'm listening to a podcast, and I don't get distracted when the mailman comes to the door or the cats start meowing at me or something like that. Just try and find ways to give yourself that kind of freedom. So wrapping up, I mean, this isn't really going away. The tech can help us adapt to this world and address many workflow challenges. I think it's really important, it's not on this slide again, that one thing we really need to do is communicate regularly with one another. Where are we seeing things really succeed with our remote working? Where are we seeing things that are challenging with our remote working? And what can we do to address them? It's not about making things perfect, but it is about addressing these shortcomings, because this is new for all of us, I think, and we just need to be open about it. So anyway, that's really it. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in, and we'll take a few real quick. While we're waiting for that stuff, I also wanted to talk a little bit about our blog in general. So myself, a lot of my colleagues, we've been doing a lot more content development. So if you want to check out some of the tech tips videos that I've been recording, you can check all this stuff out at dpsolutions.com/blog. We also write things up. You know, I wrote a blog recently about VPNs, what they do, what they don't do, how they are helpful, but also how they may be a little bit over-marketed. You might find that very useful. We're also getting our service team involved with some basic sort of techniques and skills stuff. So if you go to the blog, you can check that out and learn more about, you know, creating shortcuts or little things that maybe a nerd like me might take for granted, but that other people may find useful. So anyway, with all that being said, Jill, do we have any questions?
Yes, thanks, Ben. Yes, our first question is about policies. What other types of policies should I have in order to address a remote workforce?
Yeah, so I would say that it's not even so much that you should need to have, you know, new policies. It's just that all of the policies that you had existing need to reflect the current reality. So if I'm thinking about an organization and what policies they should have in place, I'm talking acceptable use. So what are the acceptable use policies? Says, well, what are the rules of engagement for using my computer? Well, that's still something we need to do. It's just that how does it need to reflect the remote working environment where people are maybe using a personal device, or an environment where people maybe are working odd hours because of work issues or something like that. Same with, I mentioned sensitive data earlier, so I'm not going to belabor that too much. Disaster recovery policies need to reflect the current reality of what's going on. There should be a general policy about working remotely. Also a policy, I think, and this is going to be one of the new ones, about if you do need to come into the office or you need to go visit a client or something like that, what are the procedures we need to take accordingly? How many people are allowed in the office? How do we screen people for COVID symptoms? Is there any way to, you know, what are the typical behaviors when people go to the office? How do we sanitize stuff? Things like that. I mean, that's a new policy that everyone really should consider is what do we need to do behaviorally when we're in our office? I mentioned this a little earlier, but I'm going to talk about it again, which is the responsiveness stuff. I guess you could include this in, you know, communications or something, or some kind of general communications policy, where you could say, hey, you know, it's expected that between these hours that you're available immediately, or, you know, I don't want to create a rule that, you know, I don't want to create a one size fits all solution here, but communication standards are really important. So I would take a step back, look at all of your existing policies, read through them again, determine where they don't suit the way you work today. If you'd like to discuss some of the things you have in place with us, we're happy to have a brief chat about that stuff and then go from there.
Okay, great. Thanks, Ben. We did have one more question, and that is, are there any types of activities that are better done in person versus remote?
Yeah. So I actually think you could look at it both ways. That there's probably activities that are better done remote than in person. But in terms of things that are better in person than remote, you know, obviously anything that requires a physical element to it. You know, for us, obviously there are physical hardware deployments that we have to do in person, and that's just the way it is. We minimize them, you know, for the safety of our people. There are maybe certain meetings you might consider having in person. We've done some hiring during the pandemic, and at some point, for example, we needed to have one of our new people get their photo taken in the office, and so we made arrangements for that. We had, for some of our video recording stuff, some of our marketing production, we did that in person. We used, social distancing and things like that, and we did some of it outside, but we did that stuff in person. If you feel like you have to have a meeting and have a big collaboration in person, maybe you need to have a 2-hour meeting, maybe consider getting everybody with laptops and going outside into a park or something and sitting at benches where you can work that way and keep things safe. The good thing about working remotely, a good thing about Microsoft Teams, is that there are actually things you can leverage to make these remote things work a lot better in general. I really love screen sharing and collaborative work, because I know that a lot of people are used to going into a big conference room and having a whiteboard and everyone draws on the whiteboard and things. And let's make sure we have all this recorded. Who's taking notes and things like that. Well, isn't it nice if you have a virtual whiteboard where everyone can just write in their stuff together, see it on a nice big screen sitting right in front of them, where the notes are automatically stored and you could just copy and paste it into your OneNote or something like that. I mean, I think one thing that should really be happening because of all this remote stuff is our creativity levels when it comes to how we get things done should really be rising, because our tools offer us so much that we really haven't leveraged as a society, I think, when it comes to doing meetings and stuff remotely. So there are still going to be things that are better on site. You can't replace that physical touch, but I'm very optimistic that doing these things virtually can actually provide us benefits, and that we don't have to look at this as a net negative. We could look at this as a net positive.
Okay, there are no more questions, so I believe we can probably go ahead and wrap up.
Okay, great. Well, thanks so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. If you have any follow-ups, please feel free to ping me or anyone on the DPS team. You see my email right there. We're going to have more information on our next webinar soon in terms of registration and things like that, so please make sure to attend. And again, check out the blog, dpsolutions.com/blog. Check out our security tips if you're not already on them. We're happy to help. We always like providing information to the community.